another facet of women in Star Trek. We've had so many awesome panels here over the years, and I'm so glad everyone has turned out to watch us one more time. And we're going to start talking about what it's like to be an alien woman on the bridge, or an alien woman in the room with a whole bunch of Klingons. So let's start right out. We're going to kick it off. I'm going to ask Marina.
Am I bothering you?
So women who are aliens are often depicted as the other, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And so frequently their bodies are what are kind of used to amplify this otherness, like your emotional state, you know, coming in and talking about how your view of Troy has evolved as being an alien woman and one of the only women on the bridge.
You know, I have to be honest, I didn't really regard myself as alien because I was half human and only my eyes were alien, so I used to forget that I was alien. Yeah, I think basically the only alien thing that I had that was different was that I had a power, like I had a superpower that the others didn't have. But yeah, I didn't really, I'm probably not the right person to put this question to.
And we're going to go to Mary in a second, who's
I was going to say, Mary's probably, Mary, because I wasn't treated any different. I didn't feel like it was a thing for my character, because I didn't have to wear prosthetics. When I did have to wear prosthetics, I did turn into the psycho bitch from hell. Because I don't know how you do it.
Well, that's a good example of using like your body to depict otherness and depict, you know, the way you know, an antagonist on the show, like the bad guy of the week, would kind of like interact with Troy.
Yeah, well, they were interacting. Yeah, it was like once I lost weight, I was always the body that was inhabited.
Yeah, you got inhabited by the...
Yeah, when I was chunky in the first season...
You were never chunky.
I was a bit chunky in the first season. Oh, well, that's what they told me.
Body positivity.
Anyway. Yeah. I was told constantly that I looked fat in the first season. So, yeah, the times have changed. You can't say that to actresses anymore. Yes. But yeah, I didn't feel other. And also on my crew, we were just so bonded that I never felt apart, really, at all.
That's great to hear.
Well, you mentioned Troy's difference, her otherness being her superpower, but so often in Next Generation, we see her not so much using that superpower, but having it be hijacked.
Yeah, mind raped, yeah, a couple of times, yeah. That's what I said, you know, once I got hot and skinny.
Well, instead of a superpower, it's almost like it ended up being an extra Achilles heel.
Yeah, I actually made the decision that I had a switch that I could turn it on and off. Because I thought, if you are constantly bombarded with emotions, I would, being the psychologist, I would have ended up on the shrink's couch, you know. So I made that decision very early on that I had to kind of go to that place for it to, almost like going into, like a medium going into a trance, but not obvious like that. But I did think, okay, unless it's a really strong emotion coming at me, I can decide when I want to do it or not. And it also worked with the storylines, because sometimes she could sense people, you know, a million miles away and couldn't sense the person standing next to her, you know, so it worked for the stories as well.
And Mary, so Lorel is the only Discovery lady who is fully alien that we see regularly. So how do you think she like wields that power? You know, both kind of like it's both an emotional power over Ash/Vok and a political power.
Well, I really love that we're making this discussion so much about being an alien woman, because that was a huge theme that really drove me through the entire first season, was the empathy I was able to have for Lorel. Was she grew up in Klingon culture, she's known nothing else except what has been taught to her, specifically by T'Kuvma, about who the Federation is and who humans are. I have found that particularly her relationship with her sensuality is something that obviously was very present throughout the first season, and I found as a Puritan American, my relationship with that side of myself was very, very repressed. And what I had to find in portraying those scenes between Vogue and Laurel, and then ultimately Laurel and Tyler, was that she was expressing genuine love, but in a Klingon way. And I think that it's a very extreme take on that, but that's what sci-fi is about. It's mythology. And certainly with the Klingons, they are so epic, they are so Shakespearean, they're so Greek, that I was very thrilled to be able to expend all of my energy trying to embody that side of her. But that's something she struggles with, and then ultimately, when it comes to her alienness, I think part of her difference or unique quality as a character within the Klingon world is that there is a softness and a vulnerability to her that is seeking to come out. And that was something that was ripped from the fabric of my own life as someone who is 6 feet tall, and oftentimes if people see me from a distance think I'm like gonna crush them or or
Tall lady.
Yeah.
Do you think she feels like alone, kind of in her quest?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's very, very evident when Burnham gives her the detonator and her response is, "But I am no one." I think that expresses a lot about her journey. And what's so interesting is from the human perspective, from Tyler's perspective, from pretty much anyone on Discovery, she's like this antagonistic force, this malicious force. And in the Klingon world, you see her relationship with Cole. She hid behind T'Kuvma. She tried to execute this whole plan behind Vogue because within the Klingon society, she's been told that she is inferior, and that's why she behaves the way she does. That's why she is so mysterious. That's why, she's descended from spies, House Mokai, and I wonder why House Mokai, which has a very strong matriarchal component, is known for that. Like, where did they build that reputation? Who's spreading those rumors about who the Mokai are?
We're definitely going to talk about the patriarchal situation. Eliza, did you want to weigh in on this female otherness and kind of viewing these two different alien women?
Yeah, I think Troy and Laurel are really amazing benchmarks too for us to see how far we've come in terms of portraying otherness, because Star Trek has always been ahead of the curve. I think this franchise has been ahead of its time in showing otherness and showing people who are bicultural and who are kind of stuck between cultural influences and feeling like they have to navigate those things. As someone who grew up that way, I really definitely appreciate seeing those representations in Star Trek. And so it's interesting to see Troy, who, as we said, her power was often turned against her a lot. It's cool to see that, it's cool to see it sometimes, but it felt like it was used a lot for the character. And also seeing her as a strong, graceful, empathetic person among people who really need that anchor. That's a beautiful thing to see. And then to see Laurel, who is very different in so many ways, but still embodies a lot of amazing qualities that I think a lot of people can come to, I don't want to say in spite of, but maybe because of these very specific complications with her character. But yeah, I'm excited to see more of Laurel and see where the character goes. If she can own her, who she is, and not think that she's no one anymore.
Exactly, and I am really thrilled that I can vaguely say that they're diving in, and I'm really excited for what's to come.
Sarah, how about you?
I just want to say I really enjoyed seeing Laurel meet Admiral Cornwall.
Yes.
And that's the first human she met, right? And I felt like she really let down her walls, and you got to see these two very different women connect.
I found that, I say that scene we have in episode 14 is essentially the reason I am open enough to Burnham's generosity in the finale, is that we actually hear each other. I respect her enough. I say T'Kuvma taught us that humans are without honor. About this, he was wrong. I admit that I'm wrong. I'm a Klingon, and I admit that I'm wrong because I respect this woman because she screamed back at me.
And I think that, Admiral Cornwall, I think Laurel really views her as an equal, which is great to be able to kind of bring that Starfleet Klingon and channel it through two very cool women. You know, we don't usually see that.
I think that's a great theme in the whole show from the very first scene. It's women empowering other women. From the very first scene all the way through to Laurel at the end. That's something I love so much about the show.
Sure. I'd like to speak to TNG a little bit. That is the Star Trek that I grew up with. That is the Star Trek that is part of my soul. But as a woman in science and math, I feel we've always talked about the gender disparity on the Enterprise D. We have our counselor and we have our doctor, and those are the only women that we see all the time. But in the fields I was in, I went to a school, a college that was 60% women. And in my classes, I was one of two in my fields. So it was really interesting to see it shift in such a way when you get into science and math. And that reflects in the next generation. And I feel like in fan culture, we have also, fan culture and culture in general, we have moved to a world where as women we're encouraging other women rather than competing with them. And I think that is also reflected in Discovery. And it's a wonderful thing to see.
I also think that the way Troy is grounded in science, in psychology, and also if you read the books, she had a background in botany, which is, it's very cool to kind of see that woman be on the bridge.
I did.
Yes.
Surprise!
I was a botanist as well as a psychologist.
In one of the books, it talks about how
It's
Troy's
kind of
background.
ironic because I can kill a plant.
I can also kill a plant, so I sympathize with that. But I wanted to know what the challenges you felt were of portraying the very emotional, for Mary, the very emotional scenes with Ash, and then for Troy, the very emotional scenes of dealing with some of these monsters of the week, basically. These guys that would come in. It was always a man inflicting the violence.
Well, I'm of Greek heritage, and so between the Greek part of me and the English part of me, there is not a molecule of Puritanism. And those who know me know that. I am the opposite of that. I'm telling every 21-year-old, you're in Vegas. Go have too much fun. Make me proud. Right? So, but for me, because of the Greek part of me, I just do this and the emotions are there. Really. The problem with me is trying to keep emotions back because I'm just one big emotion, generally. And I find as an actor, sometimes it's better to try and hold the tears back and try and hold it back, as one would in real life. You don't go around blubbering, try and hold it back. And then that empowers the audience to cry. If you're doing all the crying for them, then they miss that connection. So for me, it was the opposite of Mary. It was okay, Troy isn't me, where, as I've said before, the only thing we have in common is we're the same height. So it was more of being true to Troy, who was a little more,
Starfleet.
Yeah, a little more Starfleet, a little less football hooligan, and so it was being true to the character. Whereas Marina, if I was playing me, it would have been even more, emotion, really.
How about you, Mary?
I would like to say, I love hearing that because I agree, and I feel like that is so present in your performance. You see all of this amazing energy contained within this thing, and I think that's what's always so intriguing to an audience. Is
She's my new favorite.
But it's interesting because my relationship with that is partly because of the prosthetics. I can't hold back at anything. Well, in episode 12, with when Saru beams Tyler in, and he falls in my arms, and we were trying to create this Klingon pieta, and I was sobbing. But you can't see it that well because of all the prosthetics. So I really had to just trust that I had to go to those extremes because only so much was going to come out of the prosthetic. And also, crying in a prosthetic, I don't recommend it. Literally, James McKinnon, who's our prosthetic head, had to like come in between takes and just like put a tissue on my face because you can't really blow your nose. Can't really. It's just kind of like.
Plus, it's very physical. You have to like show it more with movement rather than like facial.
Yeah. Well, something particularly early on when the armor got progressively more malleable, and then I was in the jail suit, which Mary Wiseman always teased me is like, that's your comfy outfit. But that near the beginning, most of my articulation had to come from my head, and I've talked about the fact that because I had that huge ridge, I found that when I was thinking, turning it back and forth was a way of articulating that, and it felt, you know, there's such a reptilian, feline quality to the Klingons, certainly with this design. And then I spoke to Neville Page, our creature designer, and he was like, yeah, your sensors are stronger back there. And I was like, oh, well, great. So then you'll notice around like episode 8, suddenly I'm like, like all over the place, like, oh, yes, yes. Like in the scene with Cornwell at the end, when I'm like, what other option do you have?
Elisa, you're an actress too, and I would like to get your thoughts on kind of articulating that emotion.
That's amazing. I haven't done, I've done like a little bit of prosthetic work, but it's not, you know, not to that level by any means. I mean, I think I definitely resonate with what Marina's saying about like the way that I've studied, we call it like keeping a lid on a boiling pot. And it's just kind of, you have the emotion churning inside you, and you, for whatever reasons, whether it's trying to save face, or you have pride or shame, or trying to not hurt someone else with your emotions, you're keeping it inside. And I think that's what really has worked for me in terms of connecting with a character.
Yeah. So. And Sarah and Sue, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on how it was like, you know, growing up and watching these emotional scenes. You know, I started watching Next Generation when I was 7 years old, and whenever Troy or Crusher were very upset, or there was a scene, you know, where they were attacked in some way, it made me feel very emotional as a child to watch that. And you know, like, oh, you know, even watching, you know, on Voyager, when Captain Janeway died, not really, that was, and she was at her own funeral, I was so upset. And to watch the actresses portraying that emotion, and then you feeling it, like you said, you want the audience to cry. It was you know, it was very effective, I think, in terms of shaping the way I view these women. Maybe you could weigh in on what you thought when you would watch it.
You know, thinking back on it, I think I related a lot more to Major Kira, because if you got in her face, she was going to get right back in yours. I think that's
That's good. No, it's interesting to see who we identify with more, you know, and I identified more with Troy than with Crusher, because I also was an emotional child. I think that was a big part of it. How about you, Sue?
Well, I think that this is another area where Next Gen was really groundbreaking, because we can joke about it now, like how they put a therapist on the ship, but that's so important. Emotional intelligence is so incredibly important, and I feel like Troy taught an entire generation about empathy.
Well, you know, it was interesting that you say that, because when I spoke to Gene about it when I was cast, he said that, you know, by the 24th century, emotional health would be as important as physical health. But then when they were realizing halfway through the first season that they had too many women on the show, who were they going to fire? The therapist, right? It's like, at that point, she was expendable because she was just a therapist. You know, they weren't going to get rid of, I mean, Denise left the show, but they weren't going to get rid of the security chief, and they weren't going to get rid of the doctor. So much for health in the 24th century. So I have to remind you all that it was a 24th century show written by 99.9% of, you know, 20th century men. Right? You have to bear that in mind when you're watching TNG. You know, we know it's supposed to be in the 24th century, but most of it was written by 20th century men. Yeah.
And if the women of Next Gen, I think, are now often dismissed by some people, saying, well, they're in the nurturing roles, as if that is something that's not important. I mean, your doctor is important. Your doctor treating you with care is important. Any plus-size person who's ever been to the doctor can tell you horror stories about your pain not being taken seriously. Any woman can tell you horror stories about your pain not being taken.
And my mom had endometriosis, and she had a giant tumor, and they didn't find it because the doctor just said, oh, it's just, it's just your time of month. And she was like, no, I think something's wrong.
Maybe you should just lose 5 pounds and everything will be fine. Yeah,
And it's so important too, because we see TNG dealing with PTSD far in advance, and now almost every show will have some characters that's like an emotional, way of struggling with PTSD as character growth. That was kind of new at the time though, for like TNG, and then Kira was PTSD on DS9. Those were groundbreaking in terms of talking about mental health.
But I mean, the women of Next Gen took care of your physical body and your emotional health, and nothing is more important than that. So if you want to dismiss that as a nurturing role, maybe you need to be nurtured a little bit more, I guess.
Yes. Well, this is a good jumping off point, because now we're going to talk about how the women take on the patriarchy and what it means to be the only woman in the room, which is often the case for a lot of us in our professional lives and our personal lives. And I want everyone to kind of weigh in on, Troy comes from a matriarchal home, Laurel is from a matriarchal house. We want to talk about the power that women can wield and the ways in which sometimes that power is squashed sometimes by the patriarchy. So go to town, ladies.
Well, they've tried to squash. But I generally find that men are terrified of me. So...
And I love that about you.
You know that, right?
Yes, they're terrified of me too.
Yeah, men are terrified of me.
Well,
most people are terrified of me, actually, because I just tell it like it is. So I've never really had that issue, I have to be honest, of the I mean, we're not going to Me Too, we're talking just patriarchy now, right?
Well, I mean, Troy was often the only woman on the bridge.
Yeah.
After Denise left.
And yes, he always, Sir Old Baldy would ask my opinion about things, and then he'd ignore me, and then I was always right at the end of the episode. So that's just life, right? Okay, who's married? That's just life, right? Girls, right? Yeah. So I never felt that I was in that position. First of all, I felt, and it was said to me, I mean, I didn't make this up, but LeVar said it to me, actually. And he said, you're the glue that holds it all together. On the bridge and off, in life. Yeah. So,
It's very often that, I have a lot of guy friends, and it's often that, myself and the other girls in our group, we keep everyone together, we make sure we see each other, we make sure we have phone calls and texts.
Right.
That's just how, women are they do that.
Yeah, women do that. And and the other thing is, I don't fear anyone. I have no fear in me, apart from my sister-in-law. But that's a whole other story. She's the only person I'm scared of on the planet. So being as I don't have fear of men and I don't have fear of other people, I don't know that I've ever kind of experienced what you're talking about.
Who else wants to weigh in?
I'll say, well, yeah, my experience growing up, I feel very grateful that every environment I sort of entered, whether it was my parents or the different array of schools I went to in my youth.
Spelled, or you were in the military?
It's because I wasn't satisfied with that. Well, it was interesting. I always say with so many aspects of my life, but with each schooling, it was what was presented at the time.
Did you ever go to an all-girls school?
No.
See, I went to an all-girls school.
I did too. I went to an all-girls high school.
You went to an all-girls school? From 11 to 18, I was just with girls, and I always recommend to parents to send their kids.
I do too. I thought it was very beneficial.
Really beneficial, made relationships with women that I still have 50 years later. And you learn how to be without worrying about what the boys are going to say and what the boys are going to think of you. It's so destructive to young girls. I don't approve of co-ed education at all. Because boys are a pain in the ass until they're grown up.
In high school,
their brains haven't developed until they're like 25, so you shouldn't put them with girls, because we develop much sooner than that. And that's my opinion.
Well, I will say that, even though I didn't, I was always in co-ed education, that was something that somehow I just am grateful that there was enough in me, and I think because my parents really, really just, I'm an only child too, so that's a whole panel. But the way in which, and certainly when I went home, it was like there were no boundaries to what I was capable of. And they were always encouraging if I was excited about one thing or the other, and a very creative environment. And then luckily, you know, I always said my friends were few and far between, but the ones that I had really stuck. And luckily, I mean, of course, I did witness, you know, stuff in middle school and high school, but there were enough good people that I'm so grateful that the universe conspired to have in my life. But even with that, what I will also say that for college, I was in Juilliard, and the teachers did not say, hey, you're 6 feet tall, you're all this stuff. They were like, the only way you're going to become a successful actress is by diminishing yourself. In fact, the first year I was there, I would apologize either physically or verbally. I would say like, well, I don't know, I'd say something really articulate, and then I'd be like, well, I mean, like, and my voice and speech teachers every day were like, no, you're not allowed to apologize. And they cast me in male Shakespeare roles. They gave me the older women parts, the queens, and they just I was like, let me play Alma in Summer and Smoke. They're like, no, you have to be grounded in yourself. And that was an incredible, incredible gift. But then, of course, entering the real world, as much as I really do believe we make so much progress, it's still confronting the things that initially I was getting called in for, that they were very kind of specific, nothing, you know, romantic, because I couldn't be taller than the guy, God forbid.
Hollywood actors tend to be on the short.
Yeah. But that was part of the beauty of Laurel, was that romance that we found in the episode, in 4. That wasn't necessarily planned. I was just really grateful that that side of myself, which I feel is what I generally lead with in life, got to be articulated within such a fearsome character. But that's a very, that took your question, went all different directions, but.
Well, in terms of our fan experts up here, I kind of wanted you guys to talk more about, your experiences being, women, but also very active in fandom, and which is typically a male-dominated space, but we're changing that. And also as professional women, if you've experienced that as well.
Well, first of all, Star Trek fandom has never been a male-dominated space.
Not like video games, right?
But, sorry, I'm jumping the panel a little bit, but I just want to
go
into the realm of fandom. I started getting really active in fandom right when it sort of started moving online. So I was on Usenet, I was in Alt Star Trek Creative, and I found a community of women in the fan fiction community, and there were almost relationships that developed of mentorship. And because the fan fiction was so women-dominated, that judginess that you fear, when the gatekeeping, the pass this quiz, was not there. And there were women that sort of took me under their wing in fandom 20, 25 years ago who remained mentors in other parts of my life. If I had
I'm jealous of you. I did not experience that.
It's so sad that it doesn't seem to exist the same way anymore.
Is there a way we can recreate that?
I would love to.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a hard time with a college course, I would call my mom, sure, but I would also call a friend of mine, a Star Trek friend, who had been through it and was a professional working in a field for a long time. These were women who worked at JPL. These are women who were attorneys. These are women who had any kind of profession that there was, and it was just this amazing community of growth. And when you go into other spaces, there's this, well, are you really a fan? Prove yourself. Answer these trivia questions. And just really quickly, and then I'm going to stop. I have a rather large Star Wars tattoo right here.
It's Princess Leia.
It's Princess Leia. It's Carrie Fisher. And every year when the weather warms up, it gets noticed. I live in New York. People see me on the subway, and undoubtedly, people ask me if I'm even a Star Wars fan.
No, I put her on my leg for life because I'm not a fan.
This took 5 hours and a lot of money and a lot of pain just so I could impress impress you.
It is
Random
maddening.
stranger.
It's so maddening.
Look at Marina,
Like,
he's like, oh my god.
the
Star Trek's on the other side.
the like hoops that people go through in their minds to figure out how, like, you can't be a fan. I was in, I think I got into a lift going to Comic-Con this year, and I'm pretty sure I had like a Black Panther t-shirt and Star Trek earrings, or, you know, things that clearly were like nerd. And I get in the lift, and the driver's like, oh yeah, you're not going to Comic-Con, right? I was like, that's exactly where I'm going, and I don't like that tone. What is that about?
I get a lot, oh, you're here with your husband? I go, no. He's here with me.
Actually, it was kind of like that. It was kind of like that with gargoyles, when we did gargoyles, when Johnny and I did gargoyles. Thank you. And I know he didn't mean it, but Johnny, because, you know, he's an old white person, we're all old, apart from, you know, Dorney and LeVar, we're all old white people now. But he would go around saying, well, you know, Demona is Xanatos' sidekick. And I'm like, excuse me, the show is called Gargoyles. Demona's a gargoyle. You're a stupid human, right? So, who is whose sidekick here, Buster, right? Yeah.
How about you, Sarah?
Well, first talking about the business side, I work in finance, and I found that yes, corporate business is very patriarchal, so I left and I work for myself now, and I'm much happier and I make more money.
Good job.
Fandom side, I'm involved with a lot of local cons, and I got really frustrated with them because you'd go in, you'd have like a diversity panel that was all white, or a STEM panel that was all white men, and so I got really frustrated, and that's why I started doing my own events, so I could go in and say, hey, if you're going to have a panel at my event, you're going to have at least 2 women, you're going to have at least 2 people of color, please have more if you can, and we're going to talk all about issues like representation, or running for public office, or using geek art as protest, things that we can use for marginalized people to make a difference in their lives.
Because, let's be honest, girls, you know, we're talking about all this great stuff up here, but legally, women are still not equal in America because the Equal Opportunity Act has never been passed, right? So we're still not officially equal. I mean, people who work regular jobs, well, actually, actors know that because, you know, not talking out of school here, girls didn't get paid as much as the boys on our show. Right? So, and women earn 80 cents on the dollar, usually. So, we're still not equal, still have a ways to go. Hopefully by November that will change. But anyway, let's see what happens.
We have about 5 minutes left, apparently.
I wanted to talk about the, diversity and inclusion.
Yes, go right ahead. I wanted to see if anyone had anything they wanted to add in our last 5 minutes, and maybe we can get a question or two.
Yeah, so I work in the nerd space, and working for Nerdist and being part of the Geek and Sundry family, I found like 2 groups, well, one shared family that has 2 different faces to it that is very much excited about diversity and making like actual steps towards becoming more inclusive and diverse. And the things I see outside of that, and even before I got to Nerdist, it was hard for me to kind of accept and be open about my fandom for a long time because of those comments like the Lyft driver and a lot of comments that were much worse that I don't even feel like sharing and bringing you all out today. But I'm not sure how to say this besides that representation, it's not just about like having, I think we were talking before about like, it's not just about having like your couple of people on the panels and stuff. It's that, and it's also once you open up the doors or once someone gets through who is diverse and different from you, actually listening to them, actually including them, celebrating them, hearing their ideas and implementing them. I can't tell you how many spaces I've been in before where I'm just there to be a token. And I think this past year, I've always been like very passionate about inclusion and diversity, but this year was the year that I finally was like, I am not doing anything if it is not also hand in hand with inclusion. Diversity without inclusion is tokenism. So no more of that.
was awesome. I agree completely. It's been a struggle, you know, in bringing these panels to Geek Spaces. You know, we've thankfully been here doing this panel for over 10 years, but in other places, in other conventions, you know, if you're in the audience and you think I could go up there and talk on stage, I could go do a panel on women, please do it. You know, we want to be able to see more women hosting, more women, you know, just helping facilitate fandom and facilitating like the love that we have here for each other.
Star Trek conventions started in the 70s. They were organized by women, they were led by women, and women in other cities heard about them and said, I want to do that, so they did. These women shared the information on how to do it, and that led to Star Trek conventions being everywhere for years. You can do it. If you want to do it, do it. Talk to women, get information, talk to organizers, and get up on stage and speak out, because everyone's voice, if there's anything Star Trek teaches us, is that everyone's voice is worth listening to.
And you have, you know, I reached out to Mary on Twitter and I said, you know, I'd really love for you to be part of this, and you were very excited, and you said, you know, I think not only myself but the other ladies on Discovery, you know, very excited. Marina, you've been doing these panels for a while, and the fact that everybody says yes to this, you know, just and saying yes to other women, and saying yes to each other. And if you're a man saying yes to having a woman at your convention or a woman, you know, a panel there, then that's important. So I think that's, you know, speaking to what Eliza was saying about creating those spaces for each other, you know, it's not just, you know, the 6 of us, it's like everybody out here, you all have the opportunity to do that. So I think maybe we have time for like 2 questions, maybe 3, if they let us. Would we have questions? I can't see very well. We start one there, one there.
This is for Marina. I've been waiting my whole life to say thank you. Before my parents divorced, the one thing that we would do together as a family is watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I remember watching Deanna Troi handle very tense conflict and handling it so beautifully. And I remember thinking as a child, that is what I will aspire to be. And I have become a healer.
Oh my God!
And I could not have done that without Troi.
To give her a hug. Okay. When you cry, I have to give you a hug.
I'm glad we got you. Over here, go quickly. All right, over here.
Okay.
One more.
That was it. No more of that, because then I'll be crying. Okay. So, right.
Hi, Marina, this is also for you as well.
Don't cry.
It's going not to make you cry, you don't have to run over here, you're fine. I'm going to preface this by letting you know that in 1958, my parents, my brothers, my sister emigrated from a small town in northern Greece called Marina.
Tiganis mo rin. Kala sila tigan. Do you speak Greek?
Actually,
You've got rubbish parents.
No,
That's all I've got to say.
And thank you for saying it's their fault and not mine, because it is.
Yeah, it's their fault.
Absolutely, and bless you for that. My question is, when I was growing up, I was born in Canada. I was born in Toronto 4 years after they immigrated. Yay Canada, I hear you out there. And I grew up feeling the conflict of being trapped between 2 cultures. Between the Canadian culture that was more open and more progressive, and the very strict, patriarchal Greek
Actually,
culture.
when you say that, there's actually a matriarchal society in Greece. It wasn't my dad who said you can't go out with boys. It was my mum who said you. I mean, I had a Victorian upbringing, and actually, you probably had the very strict yeah, they didn't have to wait until we're done, all right? Till I've answered this.
Thank you.
Just sorry, guys, until I'm done. Don't you break in on me. I'll come over there and you go on there. But that's how I grew up. I mean, basically, once I was home from school, the door was locked. I was not allowed out.
That was my life.
Right. Okay.
And what I was going to ask you is that conflict, because you're living now in North America, that conflict between cultures.
Well, I said no to it. I said no to it. I did. I was one of those. I was the Greek girl with no Greek friends because the mothers of the other girls wouldn't let them be my friend because I was the bad Greek girl.
I'm the grade 2 dropout of Greek school, so I hear ya.
Right.
I was going to ask you if that conflict was ever used in exploring that relationship for Troy being half human and half betazoid. Did you use that?
I did, actually, I did use that because we both had crazy mothers. Yeah. In fact, my relationship with Loxana was the same as my relationship with my mother. I loved her the most when she was in a different galaxy. And I loved my mother the most when I was in America and she was in Europe. But no, it did. And it does actually, I honestly believe that part of my strength came from that background because I did say no.
Yes.
And I said, I'm sorry, this is my life. And my mother had an arranged marriage. I mean, that's how old school they were.
I said no to that one.
They did it to me when I was 19. They said, we found a lovely boy for you. I went, really? And they said, yeah, you know, we've ticked all the boxes. Because basically I was at drama school and it was like the worst thing that could happen, that I would be an actress. Because when I said I want to be an actress, my mum heard I want to be a prostitute. Right?
Yeah.
So I said to this woman, the matchmaking lady, excuse me, do you think I'm ugly? And she said, no, you're lovely. And I said, well, if I'm so lovely, don't you think I can find my own effing husband? Get in the house, get in the house. But she never did it again, because I had humiliated her in front of her friend. So that was where my strength, I think my mother saying no to me my whole life and trying to control me made me who I am today. So, you know, Mum, we fought like cat and dog our whole lives, but thank you at the end of the day, right?
We unfortunately have to wrap up, but if you see us around the convention this weekend, please continue the conversation. And just if anybody wants to wrap it up by saying quick...
Wait a second. Julia, where are you? Julia, she's giving crochet lessons today, this weekend. I said I'd give her a shout out. Crochet lessons.
And if we want to talk where we're going to be next and where the audience can find us, and then we're just going to wrap up, and thank you so much. So go right ahead, Mary. Are we going to be able to see you soon?
You will see me tomorrow with you.
At the Shakespeare panel tomorrow.
Yeah, Shakespeare
and we're going to see Laurel in season 2.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, yes.
That kind of what we're going to see you.
Oh, look at that.
How about you, Elisa?
Like that patriarchy.
I'm on the internet at Elisa Pearl. My Geek and Sundry Star Trek RPG game just finished up. We finished it, but we're starting a new one. You can watch it all though online. And I am just cooking up some fun, independent sci-fi stuff that hopefully will see the light of day soon.
Awesome. Sarah, how about you?
I'm Sarah Miyoko on Twitter, M as in Mary, IYOKO. And yeah, find me at the con, say hi, let's talk.
And Sue, we know where to find you, but give us the pitch.
I will be at the Roddenberry booth pretty much all weekend, and we have a Roddenberry Network panel on Saturday talking about the history of fandom. And if anybody's going to be in Atlanta over Labor Day weekend, I've got 16 panels at DragonCon, one of which is, actually 2 of which, focus on the history of fandom. So,
And I'm Amy Imhoff. You can find me at Lightstar1013 on Twitter and Instagram, and Shoes and Starships, which I've been neglecting, and Legion of Leia also, and StarTrek.com very soon.
Oh, and by the way, I keep forgetting to tell my fans, I have an app, and it's free. You can, yeah, I'm an app. I know, I'm beside myself. So yeah, go to Marina Sirtis app, wherever you get your apps, and download it. It's all free. Okay?
Awesome, thank you.